movement. In speedrunning, this is the single biggest room for improvement you can make. Exercising mastery of your character is a key component to going fast in pretty much any game you put your hands on. However, you probably don't think of movement when you think of a roguelike, and that's probably because you haven't played Risk of Rain 2. Welcome to Speedrunning Simplified. Roguelikes have been my favorite video game genre and a huge part of my life for over a decade now, going all the way back to the release of the original Binding of Isaac. A roguelike is a subgenre of video game, usually featuring procedurally generated levels, tons of unlockables, and permanent death to the player character. This of course varies from game to game, as there are a lot of different roguelikes, some with turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, rhythm and strategy elements, the list goes on. However, unlike let's say Super Mario 64, you usually don't strive for mastery over your character and your ability to control said character, but instead mastery over the game itself. Learning what all the items do, how enemies function, and how best to beat the game. Because permanent death of the player character means just that. Once you die, you start from scratch, and you must begin the game again from the start. Some games, often referred to as roguelites, reward the player through their runs with unlockables and power-ups that will make their future runs easier over time. But unlike typical speedruns, the way in which you control your character doesn't change all that much. And that is what makes speedruns of Risk of Rain 2 special. Going fast makes the game easier, and one special character raises the roof on the skill ceiling of that speed. To first talk about Risk of Rain 2, we have to talk about Risk of Rain 1. Right? Well, sort of. Risk of Rain 1 is a 2D platformer roguelike initially made by a two-student team from the University of Washington, Duncan Drummond and Paul Morse, later releasing the game under the name Hapu Games. Risk of Rain sold more than 3 million copies and was a huge success in the roguelike community, naturally prompting a sequel. However, while Risk of Rain 2 followed a similar approach to the first title, the game differs massively. It's no longer a 2D platformer, but instead a third-person shooter. Opening the floodgates to the third person provided, quote, much deeper design spaces and more possibilities for cool gameplay. And that it did. It was released in early access in 2019, and by March 2021, the game had already sold over 4 million copies on the PC side alone. No longer being tied to a 2D plane of movement gives both the player and the enemies so many more ways to accomplish their goal. And what is that goal exactly? To locate the teleporter in each of 5 stages, collecting items to make yourself more powerful, defeating a boss, and charging the teleporter zone to travel to the next stage, with the final boss being located on the 6th and final stage, Commencement. Like the first game, the difficulty of the game increases as the player progresses through the run, becoming more difficult the longer you play the game, scaling enemies' health, level, and damage over time. Because of this, going as fast as possible will make the final boss easier to defeat. And with the right setup, it's possible to be defeated in a single shot. There are currently 14 playable characters, known as survivors, all with their own unique abilities and playstyles. However, there is one survivor that dominates the leaderboards when it comes to speedrunning: the incredibly mobile, heavy cargo loader, Loader. The Loader is a slow but powerful bruiser that can use her grappling hook to uniquely navigate the environment. Each survivor has a primary, secondary, utility, and special skill for their moveset, and some of them have passive abilities as well. The Loader is one of them. The Loader's passive ability is called Scrap Barrier. This makes her immune to fall damage, and when you strike an enemy with her gauntlet, she gains a temporary barrier. Her primary is called Knuckle Boom, swinging her fist at nearby enemies. All survivors outside of the DLC's Void Fiend have several unlockable skills to further customize your playstyle with each character. The Loader has 2 secondary, utility, and special skills. Her utility skills are a charged punch that deals more damage the faster the Loader is moving. The charged gauntlet is a piercing punch, and the Thunder Gauntlet is a single target punch that charges much faster than its counterpart, but it doesn't go quite as far. Loader's special skills are her M551 pylon and the Thunder Slam. The Thunder Slam allows her to slam her fists down, dealing damage on impact, but her pylon is quite different. She can deploy a floating pylon that zaps up to 6 nearby enemies, but it has a unique trait: it can be grappled onto. That brings us back to Loader's secondary skills, and what makes her so unique: her Grappling Hook. Her Grapple Fist skill lets her fire her gauntlet, pulling her to the target. This doesn't do any damage and is entirely for mobility, whereas her Spiked Fist counterpart does damage, but lighter targets are pulled to her instead. The Loader's Grappling Hook is what gives her the incredible mobility that she's capable of. She may be slow, but with the right environment and a pylon to help her out, she can go anywhere faster than any other survivor. However, all of her skills outside of her primary have a cooldown. She can only use her grapple every 5 seconds. Is there a way around that? What would a roguelike be if it didn't have a ton of unique and fun items to make each run different? There are currently 148 items and 38 usable equipment in Risk of Rain 2, and these random drops naturally impact the speedruns, making it pretty RNG heavy, right? Well, of course there is going to be RNG, where the teleporter spawns, which environment you get for each of the first 4 stages, what items will drop. But what if I told you some RNG is a choice in Risk of Rain 2? There are 2 main speedrun categories I want to talk about in this video: any percent and no artifacts. An artifact is an unlockable game modifier. There are 16 different artifacts, all with their own unique effect. Some of these make a speedrun easier and faster to complete. Notable ones would be the Artifact of Command, which allows you to choose your items when you get a drop, the Artifact of Glass, which makes it so you deal 500% damage, but only have 10% of your health, the Artifact of Kin, which makes only one type of monster appear per stage. This turns the boss monster into a horde of smaller enemies, making it easier to deal with, the Artifact of Swarms, which doubles monster spawns, but also halves their health, and the Artifact of Sacrifice, which causes monsters to drop items on death, but chests no longer spawn. Of course, there is no right or wrong way to play the game. Some strategies may see the use of other artifacts, but these are just the most commonly used ones. Being able to choose your own item drops removes a large part of the RNG and allows you to go for a build better suited for speed. One item in particular for the loader would be the backup magazine. For every backup magazine you have, you get an extra charge of your secondary skill, meaning an extra grappling hook, allowing you to pull off some pretty incredible movement. With so many items in the game, there are endless combinations you could go for. However, they will all include visiting the Bazaar between time. This is a hidden realm environment that can be accessed by entering a blue portal that appears next to the teleporter once fully charged. This isn't guaranteed, however. It's a 5% chance initially that increases for every portal spawned in your run. There is a way to guarantee a blue portal to spawn, however, and that's by visiting a new altar. These are interactables found on every standard stage, with 3 to 5 possible spawning locations depending on the environment you're in. Memorizing where these spawn, especially in the first 2 stages, is very important. This altar and the Bazaar between time accept lunar coins as the currency. There are a lot of different ways to obtain lunar coins, but speedrunners typically fight the secret boss hidden deep in their Steam's user data folder to get the appropriate amount of lunar coins for a run. In the Bazaar between time, there are several different interactables. However, what we're going for here are the lunar buds. Newt the shopkeeper offers a random selection of 5 lunar items, costing 2 lunar coins each. Lunar items are a special tier of item that have a powerful effect, but have a considerable drawback. The only way to obtain them are from the Bazaar, or from rarely spawning lunar pods found in stages. The most important lunar item is undoubtedly focused convergence. Charging the teleporter in a stage takes a minimum of 90 seconds if all players stay within the zone at all times. Focused convergence makes teleporters charge 30% faster, but decreases the zone's radius by 50%. This item stacks up to 3 times, taking the charge time down from 90 seconds to 47.3. Lunar items can be very powerful when used the right way. The shaped glass item increases your base damage by 100%, but reduces your maximum health by 50%. Purity reduces your skill cooldowns by 2 seconds, but makes random effects more likely to be unfavorable. And the Hellfire Tincture essentially sets yourself and everything around you on fire. It's kind of a joke item at first glance, but it might just be Risk of Rain 2's biggest beginner speedrunning strategy, when combined with the item Razor Wire. The current world record for Risk of Rain 2 any percent is 7 minutes and 38 seconds by Xenon1, playing as the Huntress. There is a debate amongst the community that the Huntress is indeed the faster character to run on, but when compared to the Loader, she is really boring in my opinion. I think the Loader is far more entertaining to watch, and for what it's worth, second place is only 1 second behind, and that one is a Loader run. Of the 3 difficulties, there is no reason to play on anything other than Drizzle, the easiest. There is no reason to play on the others, as with the difficulty scaling and how fast you'll go, it really only affects the first stage. One other important thing to mention is to compete at a high level, you're gonna want to downgrade your game's version to 1.0.0.6. This saves well over a minute on the final boss and stage, but if you're just starting out, I don't think it's necessary, and I recommend just learning the game first instead. As always though, if you're going to run the game for yourself, I highly recommend joining the game's dedicated speedrunning Discord server and reading the rules on speedrun.com ahead of time. Now let's actually take a look at a full Risk of Rain 2 speedrun, using the Loader and the razor wire strategy. Speedrunner Gothrin's 751 run is a really good example of this kind of run, and is really easy to get into for a beginner just starting out. He lands in the Titanic Plains and gets a 5% blue orb spawn, not needing to locate a nude altar and immediately start the boss. Because of the artifacts, he's getting plenty of item drops, and only has to fight beetles, which are the easiest enemy to deal with on the first stage. He gets incredibly lucky on the first stage, leaving with 7 backup magazines and 4 razor wire already. Now would be a pretty good time to mention, what exactly does razor wire do? When the holder takes damage, the razor wire instantly attacks up to 5 enemies in a 25-meter radius, dealing 160% damage to each of them. For every razor wire the player has, it attacks 2 more enemies and increases the radius by 10 more meters. So when combined with the Hellfire Tincture, you set yourself and everything nearby on fire, and then load into them with razors. An absolutely lethal strategy. In the Bazaar, he picks up 3 Focus Convergence and a Hellfire Tincture, and he also interacts with one of the 2 Dreams before leaving. This lets you choose the next environment you get. For your second stage, you can either go to the Wetland Aspect or the Abandoned Aqueduct. The Wetland Aspect is absolutely horrible for locating the teleporter and moving around, so he chooses to go to the Abandoned Aqueduct. The Aqueduct is a much brighter and more open stage, making it really easy to find the teleporter, as you can see with his incredible movement. With all of the razor wire, simply by activating the Hellfire Tincture, every single enemy in the nearby area gets absolutely obliterated, all with him just standing still. For stage 3, he gets the Scorched Acres. He gets through it beautifully, but the counterpart Rally Point Delta is generally accepted as the better stage. Stage 4's environment can absolutely destroy a run. He can either get the Abyssal Depths or Siren's Call. The Abyssal Depths is kind of a nightmare to traverse in my opinion, and there is a deep cave the teleporter can spawn in. If this happens, the run is immediately over. Secondly, Hermit Crabs are able to spawn in the Abyssal Depths, and since he is playing with the Artifact of Kin, if they do spawn, that's the only enemy that will spawn. They spawn very far away from the player, and they don't move until the player gets close. This would result in you having to move outside of the teleporter zone, calling for a reset. Luckily, he gets Siren's Call with a good teleporter spawn. He continues to stock up on backup magazines and razor wire, and he even gets a legendary item, picking up Alien Head. This is essentially just a quality of life upgrade, but it reduces all skill cooldowns by 25%. Stage 5 will always be Sky Meadow, and this teleporter will lead you to the final stage, Commencement. If you haven't downgraded your game, the moon will look a lot different once you get up the staircase, but the fight is pretty much the same. By going so quickly, he's able to one-shot the first phase. The razor wire melts the second, and he easily one-shots the final phase of Mithrix as well. This phase is actually immune to damage for a short while in the current patch, and once you finish the boss, you have a 1-minute wait at the ship before the game ends. So if you're gonna run the game seriously, I recommend downgrading. The No Artifacts world record is a little bit slower naturally, with a 9-minute and 34-second run by Wig. With no artifacts, you have a lot more RNG to deal with, completely random items, actual bosses to deal with, etc. And without the Artifact of Glass, runners opt to visit the Bazaar twice or more to collect 3 Focus Convergence and several shaped glass, so they are able to defeat Mithrix in a single shot. The movement in this game is absolutely incredible to watch and pull off, thanks to the Loader, and with it being a roguelike, the possibilities for your runs are endless if you're creative enough. This game is amazing. I put in close to 70 hours over the last month or so. The multiplayer is incredible, and learning about the speedruns have been a lot of fun as well. I usually talk about my speedrunning experience in these videos, but I really wanted to showcase the amazing gameplay the top runners have been able to pull off this time around. I've done a few runs, Nothing special, my movement is still really bad, but I've been able to finish several runs in under 15 minutes, and they weren't difficult at all. I'd say the game is pretty easy to pick up, and I think anybody could complete a speedrun of Risk of Rain 2 if they wanted. I'd highly recommend it if you enjoy the game. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd really mean a lot to me if you left a like, and let me know what you thought of it down below in the comments. If you love speedrunning, I'd love to have you join me by subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you at the finish line of the next world record.
You're pacifist. It's fine. It's fine. Oh no, no, no! Heal.
Oh, go! No,
Let's go!
Yeah! All right. What are the options? What are the options?
Wait!
No! No, they're back!